Well. Welcome. It's nearly Christmas and the sports news gods are shining upon us this morning because there is big breaking news with regards to Chris Froome. We'll tell you about that in a couple of minutes' time. They said it would never work. But there's no need for a morning sports breakfast nonsense talk.
Yeah. There's nothing to tell anybody.
No,
everybody saw the football last night.
Exactly, and sure, what else are you going to talk about?
That's it, and everybody can read the papers themselves.
I don't need this stuff.
That's it. Like, we've kind of invented this new medium where it's completely pointless because you have television to watch the football and you have the newspapers to read all the news because nothing could ever happen in that interim period between last night and this morning.
You've got your phones in case you need them. So, what's coming up on the show today? Well, we're talking about the cyclist Chris Froome. Chris Froome, the greatest cyclist of all time, obviously, has been on an amazing era-defining cascade of winning. Go on.
You've suited up for the occasion, I see.
I have, yeah. Well, big news requires... You've only just realised that.
You came in a T-shirt and then suddenly the Froome news broke and it's like, let me suit up.
Well, let me just explain what's going on. So, there's been an adverse finding against Chris Froome for one of the asthma drugs that he uses to manage his asthma, which is obviously a pre-existing condition. Nothing to see there, folks. But he had 2,000 milligrams of this particular drug in his system. The maximum permitted level is 1,000, and this has happened to a couple of other cyclists in the past, and they've been stripped of whatever event they won or were participating in when they used this substance, and they were also subsequently banned for up to 12 months. So this is a big story in the world of cycling. This adverse finding was taken during the final week of found during the final week of the Vuelta, which obviously Chris Froome won. First cyclist since 1978, I think, to win the Tour de France and the Vuelta in the same year. And so he's come out fighting, Sky have come out fighting. Interesting nuances in the statements from both Sky and Chris Froome, where it's said that he followed the advice of the doctors on Team Sky. So it's hard to see if Froome is kind of placing the blame with his medical team. Sky are kind of saying, we're sure Chris followed the advice of the medical team, as opposed to, we think the medical team got this right. The UCI have made a statement this morning saying, well, look, this is really nothing to do with us just yet. We'll pay attention to what's happening. It's supposed to be an independent process and we'll only intervene when the results come out fully. We're going to get the full story behind that a little bit later on. But it's also Christmas, right? And so it's Christmas for hurling folk. It's Christmas for anybody who loves sport, because Tommy Walsh is going to join us for a Christmas special. Not going to talk any Chris Froome with Tommy Walsh today, I promise.
I'm itching to talk Chris Froome.
With Tommy Walsh?
Or just in general.
And we're also, so you might have noticed, maybe you didn't notice, but this is the expensive pair of headphones, of earphones rather, that we're giving away as part of our competition, I think. Follow us on Twitter, retweet the live stream, and you'll get full details of the competition. 500 quid's worth of gear given away. Jess Kelly is going to join us again today. So last week we had Kenny Cunningham in the studio and Jess was here doing our text lot. This week we have Tommy Walsh, neither of whom allegedly are on Twitter, not even as an egg. So maybe by the end of today's show we'll manage to get Tommy onto Twitter. That's our mission, should we choose to accept it.
Yeah, it's perfect timing that we bring these people in for a text slot.
The newspapers, not a peep in the newspapers about the Chris Froome story. Not even in The Guardian. It is Guardian exclusive this morning. Martha Kelner and Sean Ingle have broken this story.
In conjunction with Le Monde, I think.
Sorry, yeah, okay. So that's this is... we're starting to see this a bit more actually in these stories, where you do find two large media organisations being able to tic-tac on various elements of it. And I don't know, this feels like a fairly monumental shift in the narrative around Chris Froome, because once this adverse finding is found, you can't put that back in. You have to explain how it happened.
Also, the big Chris Froome lovers out there will say that Chris Froome has actually got a very, very hard time. Now, you've mentioned those couple of cyclists that have have had adverse findings for Salbutamol in the past. Just to give specifics on that, the Italian cyclist Alessandro Petacci was banned for a year in 2007. His finding was 1,320 nanograms per milliliter of Salbutamol. The other person was Diego Ulisi, who was banned for 9 months for 1,900 nanograms per milliliters. Chris Froome has tested for 2,000 nanograms per milliliter, so he's tested above both of these guys who both got very lengthy bans. So I'm interested to hear what the people who think that Chris Froome is getting a very, very hard time have to say now, because if he doesn't get a punishment that comes somewhere in line with these guys, then he's looked upon by the cycling world very favourably. So is this really the new age UCI? Well, we're going to find out very, very soon. The statement, as you said, from Team Sky is very interesting. Dave Brailsford has saying that Chris Froome surely had followed all the protocol that he's been given. Froome himself is saying, well, the doctor gave me the allowed amount of salbutamol here. Everybody knows I suffer with asthma. But just looking a little bit deeper into this salbutamol thing, there's a guy called Richard Van Zyl Schmidt, who is of the head lung clinical research unit at the University of Cape Town, which is a lung institute in itself, who you would imagine is quite an expert on asthma and salbutamol. He says it's a stimulant. It's likely to give you nothing more than bad shakes and heart palpitations, so it's not hugely performance enhancing, but he says if you're using high quantities of this stuff, you should not be competing in top-level sport, let alone going on to win the Vuelta a España.
Because it's an indicator that you're suffering really badly from asthma.
Precisely. And this seems to be a thing that happens to a lot of athletes. Like Bradley Wiggins has struggled with asthma in the past. It seems quite prevalent.
Look, there's a lot of asthmatics in a lot of rugby dressing rooms. You know, the prevalence of asthma amongst elite sports is way higher than it is amongst team off the ball. Having said that, like, all of my children have asthma, and maybe this is just something that we kind of like need to counterbalance with. Like, a lot of people do get asthma. Well,
after reading all this stuff this morning, I've got asthma, so I'm going to put down asthma as my reason. Well, I'm not sure, should I be saying that because I've got asthma, I should have been a Tour de France cyclist, or do I use asthma as the excuse for why I'm not a top-level athlete?
Maybe if you got the right...
I'm starting to think that it's no excuse, that it should be a reason to become a top-level athlete.
Exactly, if you got the right gear as a 15-year-old, who knows what would have happened?
Well, that's it, exactly.
More like you would have been kicking points for Kerry as opposed to winning it.
Well, who knows? There's great cycling routes.
One of those nippy corner forwards that comes out to the half-forward line and pings the ball in. The natural successor to Gooch, basically.
Yeah, that's a story for another day, really, isn't it?
It's well known that I have asthma and I know exactly what the rules are, says Chris Froome in his statement on the Sky cycling website. I use an inhaler to manage my symptoms, always within the permissible limits. Is it always within the permissible limits? Well, apparently not at the Vuelta. I know for sure that I will be tested every day. I wear the race leader's jersey, okay? Never failed a test in my life is the subtext to that. You've heard that one before. My asthma got worse at the Vuelta, so I followed the team doctor's advice to increase my salbutamol dosage. I didn't do this on my own. There's it takes a village to raise an idiot. As always, I took the greatest care to ensure that I did not use more than the permissible dose. I take my leadership position in my sport very seriously. The UCI is absolutely right to examine test results, and together with the team, I will provide whatever information it requires. And then team principal, Sir Dave Brailsford. Sir Dave. There are complex medical and physiological issues which affect the metabolism and excretion of salbutamol. Here's the science bit. We're committed to establishing the facts and understanding exactly what happened on this occasion. We haven't got a clue what's going on here. I have the utmost confidence that Chris followed the medical guidance in managing his asthma symptoms, staying within the permissible dose for salbutamol. Of course, we will do whatever we can to help address these questions. Just need some time to think up a proper answer to this before we can kind of go, oh, it was really hot. He was sweating a lot. He's so skinny now that the maximum permissible... this is my prediction of what they're going to say. Very hot, dehydration, bad asthma. It took, the level was required by the doctors, but his body didn't metabolize it the same way this time because he's got such a unique body.
That sounds like a good move. I think you should become their PR manager for Team Sky. I think all those points should be included in the next statement. The one thing though is if we take Chris Froome at his word, and the doctor did indeed say, Chris, take this level of salbutamol, take this inhaler, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Let's take Chris at his word there. Why do Sky continue to employ people who do not know what they're doing? Why did they employ a doctor who is telling his athletes to take a level of salbutamol that is double the allowed dose?
Well, the amount in his system was double the amount permitted. But I'm telling you that the answer to this is going to be that his body metabolized this differently from you or I, because he's a unique alien who has been put amongst us to win tours of France, Spain, and next year Italy.
Just ignore the fact that he's the skinniest man in the world. His metabolism is really, really slow. He couldn't get rid of this from his system quick enough. But everything else, he's just, he's a skeleton. He's a skeleton. He doesn't put on any body mass except for the specific drug salbutamol. It's magic, Ger.
Yeah, there you go. I see where you're going with this, but look, we'll keep a close eye on this story. It is going to evolve across the day. We'll speak with Martha Kelner a little bit later on. But as ever, if you want to get in touch with us, you can tweet us. Keep it legal at Off the Ball, or get us on facebook.com/Off the Ball. We're also on YouTube, and you can listen to us now live on the Off the Ball website, which is offtheball.com, if you want to just listen to the show and you don't want to actually look at us very well dressed today. except for Owen.
I know. Is there an event of some sort on today, Joe?
Phillips Sports Manager of the Year Awards are on today.
And what happens at the Phillips Sports Manager of the Year Awards?
The entire sports media industry comes
Except
together and gets pissed.
Yeah.
Except for you. It's almost like we're going to New Zealand in Chicago again.
I think I'm banned because the Phillips Sports Manager of the Year Awards was the event last year where I went to Coppers for 10 minutes to charge my phone.
Oh, that was that nice.
Yeah.
Oh, right. You made it all the way to Coppers. The drinking starts around 12 noon, so to make it to Coppers, that was pretty impressive.
No, I just went there to charge my phone because I'd lost everything else.
Yeah.
I'd lost my bank card.
And your friends.
And my friend. Well,
and your mind.
It was still there because I had the presence of mind to actually go to Coppers for 10 minutes and charge my phone.
Fair enough. Well, that's just like you're a homing pigeon at that point. You know, it's just relying entirely on instinct. Beep, 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 beep. Coppers. Whoa.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Right, let's bring you through the newspapers. We are going to start with the Mirror. I'm reliably informed that Milkgate is the lead story in all of these. Party on. Pep message after City Stars celebrations. Guardiola, we did not go over the top. Guardiola's English is brilliant at this point, so I don't know why there's a misinterpretation or a divergence in opinion about what exactly Guardiola has said. One of the newspapers, The Examiner, I think, was reporting that he will apologise to Manchester United. But that's not what he's saying at all. It's like, if we were over the top, yeah, I'll say sorry, but we weren't over the top.
Yeah.
Did you not see how they celebrated at Arsenal? They did exactly the same thing. That's what we do after every game. But that's being reported as, Pep's ready to say sorry. Yeah, he's ready to say sorry when hell freezes over.
In an alternate universe, he's like, if you took offence, I'd say sorry, which they kind of did.
Philly, you're Gavin a laugh. That is Philly McMahon on the back of all the newspapers on the back of having won the Sportsbook of the Year award yesterday.
It's also the same story on the back of the Sun. No class, it reads. Mourinho slams City as uneducated, and Guardiola, I started party. Yes, you did, Pep Guardiola. And also, it's has hard. Aidan moans about too many games after Chelsea beat Huddersfield 3-1.
Jose and Klopp, pair of brats, says John Giles. You'll hear him on Thursday night live on Off the Ball. Healy aiming to be even better. Keane Healy's done a round of media interviews where it turns out that he was on the verge of signing the insurance papers that would have ended his career a couple of years back when he had no feeling in his arm. Joe Schmidt says, look, give it one last chance, go on holidays, went off to Italy and was sitting there and had a twinge in his arm, and he goes, ooh, that's a good sign, there's actually a bit of life in it. So, and here he is now back, one of the best props in the world. No offence, Pep, we never intended to upset United, maintain City boss. That's the type of thing. It's like, oh, we're really sorry, did we offend you? Well then don't stick your head around our dressing room door. That was kind of the one of that one. And then Conor Callanan, everybody's talking about Conor Callanan today because Anthony Cunningham was at the Borden and Mona O'Byrne Cup launch.
Yeah.
In the frozen tundra of the Midlands.
Absolutely. It was snow everywhere. Davy was there as well. I think he's going to be carried on a few of the back pages. But we'll show you the back page of the Times Ireland edition. They're turning back to the football. Tunnel fight was down to education. City do not know how to behave, says Jose Mourinho. You've also got Simon Zebo there planning his Munster return already. And Leinster Lowe in for Ruddock, which is good news. That's why they signed James Lowe in the first place, in case something like this did happen to Rhys Ruddock. And indeed it has happened.
Yeah, Ruddock has torn his hamstring, so it looks like he's going to be out for at least 3 months. So Zebo's still hopeful of playing in the Six Nations. Good luck with that one, Simon. They've stormed above Liverpool, Arsenal and Spurs. Burnley are fourth. We haven't mentioned this yet, but Burnley, absolutely ridiculously, are fourth in the Premier League. And it's an amazing achievement. And fair enough, Sean Dyche obviously doing very well. Still think Big Sam's going to be a better Everton manager than he would be. But and the GAA should trial 2 refs, says Dub Chief. This is the first hint of the stuff that's on the back pages / front pages about the Dublin CEO, John Costello, who had his annual report out yesterday, which is making some waves today.
And the last football lead of the morning is in the Racing Post. Relentless reads the headline. Late goal is likely, they say, as Gunners pound away at Hammers. That's West Ham versus Arsenal. It's an 8 p.m. kickoff this evening. Okay,
here we go. The Empire Strikes Back. It's the Blue Book, which we haven't seen in a long time, and the Smoking Gun, and that's John Costello dressed as ex-character from the Star Wars.
What's his name? Somebody is going to tweet us immediately telling us, but
well, they probably won't.
Well, I'm very, very disappointed in my own knowledge right there.
One of the bad guys from Star Wars.
Yeah, that's enough.
Is it Darth Vader before he becomes Darth Vader?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, there you go. That was a cultural cul-de-sac we've wandered down and can't get out of. But yeah, that's the whole point. Dublin are now the empire. They're the ones with all the success and all the money. And he's saying, look, we have loads of problems and leave us alone.
I would like to see the Anakin Skywalker graph for John Costello, where he started off as just this happy person who was happy to use the Force, and then suddenly Paul Kimmage wanders into Off the Ball Studios, tells everybody that Jim Gavin doesn't appreciate his All-Ireland win, and then suddenly he becomes Darth Vader. Is it this what happened here? But
much, yeah.
He's pretty much always been angry, hasn't he?
That's what the Examiner is saying, by the way.
On the back of the Irish Daily Star, it's also GAA, but they're going with the Conor Callanan story. Conshare reads the headline, hurlers hoping to lure Dublin dual star O'Callaghan. It's interesting words yesterday from Anthony Cunningham, because he's saying, well, maybe we can take Conor Callahan for just 1 month. And then, of course, he can play the rest of the year with the footballers. Is this kind of like, take a little bit and you might get a little bit more?
Yeah, well, you know, he loves the game so much.
Yeah, like...
It's in him.
Of course it is. I think what he's trying to say is that if Conor Callanan just tried out into county hurling, he might just love it. Yeah. You know, it'd be great for him.
Well, you would. If you're the Dublin hurling management team, you're like, come on. No?
Of course you are, because he's like arguably the best hurler in the country.
No, let's not get carried away.
Come on, like, why not?
Well, because he's a club hurler, and there are like, we'll ask somebody who knows a thing or two about.
We'll ask Tommy in a sec.
Yeah.
But I'm completely getting carried away with Conor Callahan.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to Kerry. Right, where are we going next?
We've got our right hurlers.
You do. Paul Galvin.
Paul Galvin's a decent hurler.
Best hurler in the county.
Well, if we're going by my logic here, every footballer is the best hurler around, right?
Yeah, well. Where are we going next?
You're going to the Irish News.
The Irish News, yeah. Career comes before county for Armagh defender. Haven't read the story yet, not going to lie. I'll read it a little bit later and tell you what it's about. So it's one of the Armagh footballers, I suspect, who has decided that he doesn't want to be part of Kieran McGeeney's empire, and has decided to put his career before...
I wish I could commit to the football, but you need to make priorities at certain stages in your life, and football isn't going to pay the bills, reads the player.
Shay Heffron. There you go. Come on, Shay.
Let's move very, very quickly on to the Irish Independent and get away from this. It's picture Katie Taylor, but they're leading with the Simon Zebo story. I'll be back to play for Munster again, and Taylor expects tough fight and bit to end huge year on a high. She's fighting this evening in York Hall in the UK. So her first defence of the title just 6 weeks after winning the thing.
Yeah, so the Irish Times is leading on the Cian Healy story, and that was the bit that I told you a little bit earlier on about how he felt like his career was nearly over. Healy still chasing after coming so close to retiring. This is the fact that his body fat is down to something like 11%, when even at his peak it would have been up around 19%. So he's gone well, and fingers crossed that all those nerve issues are gone. And a very quick look at the UK back pages and The Guardian. Mourinho and Guardiola keep up war of words. United manager takes moral high ground while City rival tries to defuse the row. And there's a picture of Tiamue Bakayoko there as Chelsea have beaten Huddersfield 3-1 last night. You've also got Fury set sights on Joshua after being cleared to fight again. They've backdated that ban. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty handy, isn't it? Yeah, you're banned for 2 years, but don't worry, the ban's you've already served it because you haven't fought for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And now we can have a super fight where everybody gets rich. Exactly, it's a win-win-win-win-win. Particularly the body making the decision to have the super fight. Nobody loses here. As long as there's consistency and you backdate it for everybody, yeah. I'm happy with this kind of arrangement. Boxing is a very unique sport where you're trying to kill your opponent, and if you actually have been taking drugs, it makes it easier to kill your opponent. Yeah, or if you're kind of overworking yourself and you've taken so many drugs, you might actually do a lot of damage to yourself. We've seen that in the good old days of the Tour de France. None of that matters so long as we can watch two fighters poke the heads off each other. That's it. Right, let's move on. It's Christmas time. It's time to revel in one of our happiest things that happened this year, and that was the arrival of Tommy Walsh as part of Team Off the Ball.
This is the dream. Shohee on Ringload. Whether you're from Cushendall in Antrim or Mount Sion in Waterford, Ballygalget in Down or Loughrea in Galway, Ballyshannon in Donegal or Galway in Kilkenny. This is what it's all about. Every young hurler, no matter where you're from about 3-4 years of age, has dreamed of playing in an All-Ireland final, Nathan. Whether it's scoring the winning score, whether it's making that match-winning hook, that match-winning save, that's what you dream of, and that's what gets you out into the back gardens evening after evening, weekend after weekend. For some of these players, they will realise that dream, Nathan, for the very first time, but for many of them in the Galway camp it's the 4th time, and some 2 players, Kevin Moran and Michael the Brick Welsh, it'll be their 2nd time in an All-Ireland final. So what a day we have in store. Waterford, they haven't won the All-Ireland since 1959. Nathan, the Beatles wouldn't be formed for another year. Their first album, Nathan, was Please Please Me. How many Waterford people will be saying that for the 70 minutes today. Galway haven't been champions since 1988. The Irish people, including myself and Di here, we would not know the name of that little Italian striker from Italia 90, Toto Schillaci, for another 2 years. How well would Toto play if he was out here today? The atmosphere is electric, Nathan.
Lads, I'm going to tell you something. It's the first time in history I can ever remember. The crowd around us are piling in around Tommy Walsh. It's like there's a minute to go in the World Cup and there was no televisions. Everyone is piling in to hear what's happening around this lad here. It's absolutely unbelievable.
All right, yeah, so that was the start of the All-Ireland final this year. How are you doing?
Great, Jerry. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's look back a little bit at some highlights of the year and some of the main takeaways. I think Galway finally getting there is good for the game. I mean, I know maybe as somebody who would have competed against them over the years, you don't really want to feel like that about something like this that happens, but fair play to them eventually for getting there.
It is, Jerry, and I suppose success breeds success, and like there's only so many years you can go and I suppose stay getting to the final maybe and getting beaten without people, I suppose, giving up on that. But I suppose them getting to the Holy Grail finally, every young, I'd say, hurler from 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age up to 22, 23, they're just out hurling mad, because now they know that we can win an All-Ireland again. Like it was 1988 the last time they won it. And you know, slowly I suppose the supporters start saying, will we ever get there? Is this just what we are? Like you see how long it's taken Mayo. It's not guaranteed that you're going to get over the line. And I think it's just going to give every club, every person in Galway that hope now. Like we'll see him next year. Like they'll play with a different confidence. Definitely in the league, and you'll see him playing with a different confidence that they'll win maybe matches they shouldn't win.
Why were they able to do it this year that they weren't previously?
Yeah, see, I suppose there's so many little things. But the one thing I would believe in, I suppose, if you stay knocking on that door, it'll open eventually. And like they had a big win against Tipperary in the league, and when you beat the top teams, that gives you that extra bit of confidence. And like we played them in 2012 All-Ireland final, and I'd say by half time they should have had us beaten. And for some reason we weren't playing well and we stayed in the game, and we came back and we ended up beating them, and we didn't even score goals, I don't think, in that second half. Towards nowadays, I think this year Galway were different. They just seemed to stay going. The scoreboard didn't seem to matter. They didn't change their tactics. They just stayed going, attacking. So
it seemed like as well that the young lads who came in actually were able to add straight away and live up to their own hype and reputation, because traditionally Galway have these great young teams who would win 2 All-Irelands or back-to-back minors or a minor and an under-21. Oh, this is going to be the team that does it. Yeah. And there was so much expectation and pressure on them that they didn't perform. But this year the young lads were like brilliant for 70 minutes or 75 minutes as required.
They were brilliant, and that's the one danger of coming in as an All-Ireland winning minor onto a team that hasn't won an All-Ireland in so many years. The expectation straight away is for you to deliver, I suppose, your county to the promised land. You look at ourselves, or even Tipperary, like a young lad comes on, no matter how good he was as a minor, tips away with 2 or 3 points, everyone's happy with how he goes. Yeah. Towards with Galway, I think they probably expect him just to score 1-5, 1-6 every single match. Yeah. Towards you see this year, Joe, there was no question, will we put him in full forward, will we put him wing forward? He was left out centre forward, and that was it. Didn't matter how the game was going. And he was let tip away then. There was no questions, put him in there, that's the best place for them. They just left him out there. So everyone was able to find their own feet. And Conor Whelan, I suppose, was for me the find of the year for them so far. Consistently every single day, both in his defending as a corner forward and his attacking. And I think that's the difference between the teams that go on and win it. When they're not in the game, what are they doing?
Yeah, he's got that real physical aggression that a lot of corner forwards traditionally don't have. They would shy away. They wouldn't see their job to be to break up or to stop what's coming out. But you know, if you're marking him, you're going to be black and blue at the end of it.
Yeah, well, even in my last few years playing, they were the most physical team I came across. Just when you had the ball, they're so strong. And you look at all their attackers now, like they're all nearly 6'0", bar Conor, and he's still kind of a block of a young fella. Yeah. So if you have a big guy like that and well able to hurl, it's going to be much more difficult.
Yeah, they've got the skill set, all right.
I think you were making the point at the roadshow before the All-Ireland that if Galway or indeed Waterford had gone on to win it, it would be much tougher than any of the All-Irelands you were involved with, because you came in and you were winning straight away, and being in that winning mentality is much easier. It's a much easier place to be than actually trying to find that promised land and getting into that winning habit.
It is, and I suppose that's where they'll be next year. Like they don't have to prove themselves to anyone anymore. It's just a case going on and try and win another All-Ireland. They've no doubts now that on the big day they can perform. Like when Waterford, who weren't in the game, scored that 2 goals in the first half, they came back into it. I think with 10 minutes to go, there was still only 2 or 3 points in it. So them Galway players were probably still saying to themselves, is this going to happen again? Are we going to get beaten on the line? But they didn't. They went through, got through a tight game. So now going forward, when that happens next year, them doubts won't be as strong, because they'll say to themselves, well, on the big days we done it. And I think that's where it'll be a big lift for them Galway players over the next few years.
What about Waterford? You mentioned them there. Like, it's progress of sorts, but it's not like, so a semi-final last year, a final this year, a big win against Kilkenny for the first time and in 50 years, and you definitely feel like they're the ones who are next prime to make it. But as we've talked about Mayo, there's no guarantees that they're going to automatically step up now and be able to win All Ireland next year.
Yeah, there's no guarantees whatsoever, and you look at how hard it is to get to an All-Ireland final or a semi-final, what it took for Waterford to get there. There's no guarantees they'll get there again. Now the only thing is, with Derek back there again, he's very, very level-headed, and any of his interviews that you'd read, he seems to be able to get him into a good place, and the guys will all love going back, they'll all love playing. But I suppose it goes back to the argument of their tactics again, like when it comes to the elite level, so that's usually semi-finals and finals. When you're playing against the top teams, can you stay inviting them on and getting away with it? Because when you play so many guys back, you're inviting basically the opposition on against you. Now that's okay if you're playing against a forward division or a midfield division that aren't going to put up big scores, but usually you're in an All-Ireland final because you put up big scores. And if you see what happened in the final, like Galway, like in the first few minutes they had so many scores, five or 6 points got, and you just can't give guys that much, I suppose, space in around their own forward division. So I think Eric is going back, but I think he has big decisions to make in regards to what way they're going to play.
I thought it was interesting too that Austin Gleeson did come out and say, I found it difficult carrying the burden of being hurler of the year. And like, you forget that because he's been around and doing magical stuff for 3 or 4 years, you forget that he's still really a kid in comparison to a lot of other of the hurlers who we now come to expect to be seasoned hurlers. So hopefully he'll progress for that. Yeah,
sure, hopefully the pressure will come off him a bit there now, but like, it is difficult. If you look at any of their forwards, like young Bennett, I know Brick used to win a lot of ball out in the half forward line. Like Patrick Hearn was finding it hard to get into the team. Morris used to come on the last 20 minutes. But it's hard for their forwards to stand out. And he was in, when he was playing his best hurling, Austin was in that forward line. But you're 4 forwards versus 6 backs.
Yeah.
Like, it's very difficult to do what he's trying to do. Whereas if he was playing in the orthodox 6 versus 6, maybe the same pressure wouldn't be on him. Now, it'd be different if he was put back maybe centre back.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Well, if he was put back in centre back in that kind of a formation that they're playing, I'd imagine he'd be on a mountain of ball.
Yeah.
Because he could just go his I suppose strength is his ability to read the game.
Yeah.
So he's just going to be where that ball is. He's so strong, so good there that he'll win it if he's there. So if he's back centre back, I think you'd see. No, I still thought he had a good year as well. I know he was in Novan in the final, but
yeah, he had a good year for anybody. But when you have his talent, you kind of want him to be one of the top hurlers in the country, and so that's kind of where the difference is. Is his future centre back maybe?
It is if they stay play the formation they're playing. To get the best, if we want to see Austin Gleeson being the best hurler in Ireland day in, day out, I think that's where. I just don't think anyone can be the best hurler in Ireland up when you're playing a forward division of maybe 4 versus 6 or 3 versus 6.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to be outnumbered unless you win that ball first time. If it breaks left or right, you have no chance. So in their current formation, if you want to see Austin Gleeson maybe hurler of the year again, I would say back in the back somewhere, centre back.
He's kind of living with that tag as well, though, isn't it? It's really tough being a talisman. You look at Tony Kelly, and it's kind of the same point post-2013. Still puts in really good seasons, but potentially will never reach that promised land of being the best hurler in the country once again.
Yeah, and I suppose it's so funny. Like, a lot of it as well depends on how your team goes and that. Like, you look at Tony Kelly with Ballier. We were talking about the same way we're talking about Conor Callanan at the moment. Tony Kelly last, say, February or March before the All-Ireland final will say he was the best hurler in Ireland. Everyone would have been, I suppose, commenting on that fact. He was just brilliant in bringing the Ballier to the Munster final and bringing them to their county final. I think the way Tony plays, he would be a much smaller player. So his, I suppose, strength is in his ability to find space and get onto the breaking ball. And what seemed to happen in the Club All-Ireland last year was Coola just put a man marker on him and he just followed him. It's like we'll say what Jackie did to Lara Corbett in the All-Ireland final. If you're standing in one position, we'll say full forward, well, the ball is coming in, it's you or your marker wins the ball. But if you have a running type game where you're depending on breaks, which I think Tony does, like Lara Corbett does, if you put a man marker on him, much more difficult, because he has no interest maybe in playing the ball, it's just blocking your runs. And
you mentioned Tony Kelly, we'll come back to him a little bit later on, but also Conor Callanan. Owen makes the ridiculous point that he's the best hurler in the country at the minute. He's not quite the best hurler in the country, is he? I mean, there's a big difference between club and inter-county.
The ceiling is incredibly high.
That's a different point. That's a different point. Right now, at this moment, you said he's the best hurler in the country.
Possibly. we don't know the answer, is the thing. We don't know the answer.
We do.
Jeremy, I'm sorry, I'm actually going to disappoint you on this as well. I was only talking about it the other day, and then the whole, well, it's club, he's only playing club. Only, I don't mean that because club is extremely difficult. To me, Conor Callanan is the best hurler in Ireland right now. Now, I know the county haven't played, but it just reminds me of DJ. I remember us going to Gorn matches, same as that. And there used to be an extra few hundred people at just their ordinary first round league games and that, just to see DJ, because when the ball comes into a space, next minute, bzz, the whole place is just on a buzz. What's going to happen? You look at Con, and ever since, I'm not sure about the county final, but ever since then, when that diagonal ball comes in, it's usually two-man full forward line. So it's just a kind of what's going to happen next. Usually he gets the ball, goes round his man, either gets fouled or puts the ball in the net.
Yeah.
To me, I think he's the best hurler in Ireland.
Right.
He reminds me of DJ.
Right, well, that is high praise.
Yeah, and he can't ever get to that level because he won't be putting in the same time into his hurling. And, you know, if he was to get to play inter-county, like, you know, he's not going to have the same touches that he could have if he was playing, 100% of the time.
So he's obviously, 21, turning 22 now, and the talk amongst Dublin football fans is that all the Dublin footballers will be exclusively committed to the footballers, at least until they do 5 in a row, because obviously, you say it and it says, straightforward, but it's obviously not straightforward. But at that point, as 23, 24-year-olds, him and some of his other teammates could easily decide that they want to be hurlers and hurl exclusively. So that's not too late for him to get back to a level that's really good, if not quite DJ level.
Yeah, it'll depend really on, as you said, the success of Dublin. I would nearly say the opposite. If they stay winning, the hurlers will have no chance of getting Conor Callanan.
Yeah.
It's only if they start going through rocky patches where they're being beaten maybe in earlier rounds before All-Ireland semi-final stage. Suddenly then you could see, as you're saying, Anthony Cunningham, we could do with him for a month.
Yeah.
But if they were betting at Leinster whenever, maybe in July or that, and there was still a semi-final and final to play, maybe then they could bring him on. But I think as long as Dublin football are going well, I think it's the time that you're putting into it these days. It's like asking someone to be a professional tennis player and a professional soccer player. Very, very difficult to do. And I don't think, especially the way we're all bought into this team ethos at the moment, I don't think Jim Gavin would be happy to see a guy off for a few weeks, someone else training really hard, Con coming back in and still playing.
Yeah.
What do you make of a so-called football man and Pat Gilroy getting that job?
Yeah, well, I suppose he was more in, to create just... When he took over Dublin footballers, he seemed to create a bond amongst all the players, and everyone just bought into it straight away. We saw him less and less, I suppose, in the media. We saw them, really, everything was just about Dublin and Dublin winning. So I think they're bringing him in for that reason, that there's, as we all know, there's many Dublin players that aren't on the Dublin panel at the moment. So I think he's back in to just maybe create a spirit inside in that Dublin camp that everyone want to be part of.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason he's in. And Cunningham's in then to I suppose, show the hurling side of things. Now, Pat Gilroy is supposedly a big hurling man inside in St. Vincent's.
In fairness, he is, yeah.
So...
It makes them dangerous though, right?
Dublin, it'll depend. There's so many good teams there at the moment. I don't know how the likes of Danny Sutcliffe and these guys are going to, I suppose, come back into it. What's their hurling going to be like out of it for 2 or 3 years? If they get a good league campaign, well then there might be a sudden confidence rush among the whole place. But for them to do well this year, I think they have to have a good league campaign.
So maybe it's a 2-3 year process.
Yeah, I'd say maybe put in the foundation this year and then we'll start to see Dublin, because when a hurler comes to maybe 18, 19, when he leaves the minor age group, maybe suddenly he'll have a decision to make. Instead of at the moment, I think it's basically all football.
Yeah.
So they might get a good hurler, maybe a Conor Callanan in the future. They might get to play the hurling instead.
Yeah, for sure. Davy Fitz was the other big story that we haven't spoken about this year. His re-emergence onto the scene as it looked like, for all the world, a calmer presence on the sideline until all of a sudden he's in the middle of the pitch. And ultimately, that doesn't seem like it was... it didn't damage the team in any way, and in retrospect, maybe it was exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, well, I think we all know what Davy brings to it. Like, whether he meant it or not, that's his character. He just gets involved in everything. His enthusiasm is probably his biggest strength, in that he's down there in Wexford and everyone wants to be part of that now. I'm not sure what way it is this year. I know there's a few lads after pulling out of the panel for work reasons and that. But last year, just the whole of Wexford, we've seen the biggest attendance ever at a Leinster final, over 60,000.
Yeah.
That's what Davy brings. When you bring enthusiasm that to any job, to any sport, well, it brings guys with you. And I think that's what Davy done, and he got involved, and it worked out for him in the end, because they came back, Wexford, in that game, and barely got, well, for a while they did, until the goals started going in. But so he was able to use that then as a, you know, maybe a reason he done it.
He got hammered for the defeat against Waterford, but again, like, I felt like he was always coming back for a second year. I mean, I know there was a bit of to and fro about whether or not that was going to happen. It did feel like he wasn't just going to come for 1 year and then feck off. So that defeat against Waterford feels like you're criticising them for being defensive, but they're getting their defensive structure right. This year we need to see a bit more from them as an attacking force. That's what the evolution needs to be. Yeah,
I think so, Ger. I think that system works very well in building confidence, building a spirit around the group, which means that we can compete against the big teams. But ultimately, to go on and win these games consistently, you have to, I suppose, as you said, move forward and maybe have some sort of evolution in your team. So I think next year, if they go back and do the same thing, they will probably get a result here and there and that. But I think when you win, suddenly your ambitions are a lot higher. So suddenly doing what they did last year isn't going to be good enough for Wexford or Davy Fitz.
Yeah.
It'll be go on, maybe win a Leinster final, get to an All-Ireland semi-final. So for them to do that, they will have to move forward, I believe.
Do they have the players to do that?
They do, because they've won under-21s. They've won 3 Leinster under-21s in a row. And like, if you've them players, I know they're probably most of them are there now, well, that shows that you can do it. And they beat Kilkenny in 2 or 3 of them finals. So they have the players. Like, again, Conor MacDonald probably had a quite enough end to the year last year. Again, he was playing in that against 2 or 3 guys.
Yeah.
So he wasn't just 50-50, man on man. And they definitely have the players to go on and do it. But they won't be the best team in Leinster. But I think for them to win a Leinster final, they're going to have to push up.
Yeah, I mean, you don't always have to be the best team to win finals.
No.
That's the way the knockout sport works. How did you find the whole year being behind the microphone for a change? Is that something that you had ever thought would happen?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I didn't. I suppose it all started when I came in with JJ and Taggy in here last February, maybe, or March or that, and we had a chat, and just Nathan asked me would I be interested. So I said, listen, I try it out. But what I didn't, I love the live stuff. You probably guessed that from the games. I love being just there. Even the morning of it, you're thinking of what way the game is going to go. And you know, and I do look up a lot of guys on YouTube and that, of how they're kind of commentating on games and that. And so I suppose, what do I try and do? I just try and get involved in the game. Like,
yeah.
You're learning off the best. Like, I'll be trying to read up on Micheál Mahertig, Micheál O'Hare, Marty, like, and you'll be trying to take tips off them guys. And I just found I enjoyed it. I love the live stuff, the game day, because it's bringing back that kind of nerves, the excitement, the enthusiasm, and you're just getting involved in it then, and trying to keep yourself calm then is probably that's another maybe thing for another day.
Yeah, no, we don't want you to, no need to stay calm too much. I want to show you a bit of Jackie's book. Obviously, I think Jackie was on the shortlist for Book of the Year. Were you pissed off when you started to read Jackie's book and you realised he told all your good stories?
Well, it means I can't bring up our
That's
book
what I was
now.
saying, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Jackie is Jackie, and it was always going to be like that once he was bringing out a book.
I think you're mentioned 111 times in the book. I did a quick Control F yesterday. It's so I think you're one of the most mentioned people in the book, at least. Hardly a surprise.
Yeah, well, I don't know why that was, but I suppose I came in. I was in school with Jackie since first year in St. Kieran's College, so I suppose we go back a long way, and we were only at his wedding there last week. We had a good old time again, so no, yeah, not surprised at that really, I suppose.
So the first one I'm going to show you is you guys are at a GPA All-Stars event, but it clashes with a night in Kilkenny and Langton's. So the GPA organised taxis for you and booze, and so you're on the way home and you're supposed to be in Langton's, you're getting phone calls from everybody going, where the hell are you? And you're like, we don't know, we're in some pub in Clara. And you disappear off to the toilets and come back. Where's the second one here? Tommy went to the Jackson. When he arrived back, he pretended to be a young bull who'd just been let out into a field for the first time. A young bull wouldn't have been as wild. Tommy was leaping around like a demented leprechaun. Then he decided to play a game. You have to disappear around the corner and you have to come back as an animal, and we have to guess what kind of beast you are.
Yeah.
That's the classic, what goes on tour stays on tour, and then it appears in print.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, sure, listen, these things happen, and we had great fun. I suppose you'll probably get that from the team of the book. We had great fun. We were kind of much the same type of characters off the field as we were on it. We enjoyed each other's company, and yeah, that was probably just one story of many that maybe I didn't need to have to be in the book. It's all fun for you guys looking and reading about it, and it's about yourself, maybe it's not so funny.
That's class for us. That sense of camaraderie that you guys had, and that kind of bond, that it was clearly there at the most difficult moments on the field. When did you guys begin to have that? Like, when did you realise that this team was something special?
Yeah, well, we were lucky enough in that we won an under-21 All-Ireland after no success underage. Tony Forrest, Nina Co-op, minor. First year under-21, we got beaten in the Leinster semi-final, last minute Rory Jacob goal. So it came from having no success, that no one really spoke about us, to suddenly being All-Ireland champions under-21. And when you win like that, you see it with the Galway lads, you see it with the Clare boys that won the All-Ireland in 2013. Winning creates a bond with guys, because like that, you're out celebrating together for a few months, and you just get closer. You're spending so much time together, and then obviously when you're winning, guys are telling you you're great lads.
Yeah.
And sure, it's all positive, all great stuff. So
who was on that team, that under-21 team?
The under-21, so there was the one that won it.
Yeah.
Jackie was captain. There was myself, David Herity, Taggy, JJ. They were doing the guys, I suppose, that were... Conor Phelan was on it. He won the All-Ireland 2003. And a few more guys that are still brilliant club players.
Yeah.
So we'd still all be very close, a lot of us. And so I suppose that's where it started. And most of us were on that team that got beaten the year before by Wexford. So, and we were on the same guys. We were on the minor team that were beaten by Offaly. We're the first Kilkenny minor team to bet in 10 years.
Right.
So that's where it came from. And when you win, then we just created that bond.
Yeah, I think Jackie describes you as the black sheep of Kilkenny after that 2000 minor loss to Offaly. I think 11 years was the gap since Kilkenny had been beaten. But like at that time, once the under-21 success starts to come, he tells a very good story about the two of you meeting Brian Cody in town, and he says you're going very well, and you end up dyeing your hair blonde. And I think it ends up working out a little bit better for you because your performances match it, whereas Jackie goes through a bit of a patchy spell of form.
Yes, and we were 20 at the time, maybe 19 years of age at the time. So you're not really thinking about anything at that stage. You just kind of go with the flow, and the two of us, that was the time of the bleached heads where everyone had them. So we had a bottle of bleach and bleached them, but we weren't thinking really if things don't go well. Cody, well, sure, we weren't involved in Cody's that stage, but the under-21 guys would hold it against us. And sure, the very next game, we went out against Wexford, but we still didn't think anything of it. I think when you're young, that's the joy of being young. You just go with things and you're not thinking of consequences of anything. So, but that was the fun we had, like, you know. And the thing about it is, though, I suppose, looking at that, maybe you might be thinking we were out having a ball the whole time. This was after matches.
Yeah.
So there was no guys going for a few drinks of a Saturday night, you know, other than if there was a championship match on.
Yeah.
So there's no guy sneaking off to the local for 2 or 3 pints. This was all, we won, we lost, and we went out together.
And were you obsessed with hurling for Kilkenny at that stage? Like, was that the be-all and end-all of everything it was? Or did you kind of think, this is something I do, it wasn't incidental?
No, and I suppose this, like, there's so many different personalities in that panel. So you have Jackie, who's obsessed with preparation, obsessed with training, obsessed with, diet, hydration, doing everything that meant he was going to be right for training and the matches. Towards I just loved the games, so as in training games.
Yeah.
So I was doing something that I just absolutely loved. Like, I wasn't brilliant at drinking your 3 litres of bottles of water, 3 litres of water a day. I wasn't brilliant at looking at the calories on the back of food cartons. mine was just couldn't wait for training. If they didn't play a match in training, then I was devastated. So that's where mine came from. I was doing something I loved.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing something to win in All Ireland. Like, I was just doing something that I was having a great time doing. And that was probably the difference. And there was probably a lot of different personalities. And lucky enough, in my time, Cody was my only manager. And if I loved matches, he loved matches even more. So we never played training without playing a big match.
Really, every game, yeah.
Every training session, bar the Friday night before a game. Maybe the Wednesday in later years, the week of a game. But from January on, as long as you could do it, the light was there. We played matches and training, and that's what I love doing. I love going in, winning the ball and out.
Would they only be short matches, like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or would it be a full half hour, 35 minutes?
Yeah, it all changed with, I suppose, different learnings and teachings and that. So when we started, we might have a match for an hour and a half.
Right, okay.
Yeah, back in the early 2000s. But in later years, it was more based on science, and you might train for 3 10-minute spells or 3 15-minute spells.
Yeah.
But every match had to be 100%. There was no taking it easy. So if he felt guys were starting to get maybe a bit burnt out, well, then he'd bring it back to maybe a 15-minute game, but it was still flat out.
Yeah. Did you get better as a hurler as you went on?
I think the lads around me got better, so maybe that's why I got better. But no, I don't know.
Because you weren't working. It doesn't sound like you were obsessively working on like some specific aspect of your game. That it's the match play, it's playing in a match and understanding the ebb and flow of a game that is the skill that gets honed by training. Yeah, and I suppose you become confident in your own abilities. So when I started, a guy might I didn't have speed, and I wasn't slow, but I had no speed to catch a guy if he won the ball. So like at the start, you know, a guy might clip you for 2 or 3 points. You're constantly trying to, what'll I do next? So you start following him. Yeah. But sure, that was the wrong thing to do, because he always had that step or two on you, and he'd still score 2 or 3 points. So I started thinking, and this comes with, I suppose, time and confidence. I started saying to myself, well, listen, there's no point in me doing that because I'm playing into his hands. So let's be where the ball is going to be. He still might clip me for 2 or 3 points. Like a lot of guys, you need to be closer to your man. But I'd be trying to be where the ball is. And my thinking then was, well, that was where I was, I suppose, that was my strength. So if I was where the ball was, that meant my man didn't have it. So that meant I had a better chance of playing well. Now, bearing in mind, to play that game, I had to have fierce, unselfish midfielders. So I had Michael Rice, Derek Ling, Chan Fitzpatrick. If you ever go back over any games, they're always hovering around where I was. So it was okay for me to do that. But if I had a midfielder that was gone, kind of rambling up to the full forward line or that, I could be 2-on-1.
What's that?
You would have been left in a 2-on-1 situation.
No,
with his man, maybe.
It'd be a 1-on-1 as regards my lad would be out there, but I would be after giving him 10 yards of space.
Yeah.
He'd get the ball and go around me every time. So
say if you are in that position and the ball's up in the air, talk to us about what you do to potentially give yourself the advantage, because some of your opponents have said there could be a hurl flying anywhere. Like it's, I think you quote a very famous Christy Ring quote about just swing everywhere if you don't know where the ball is in your Laker Gale. Like I think that's certainly a huge feature of it, and you definitely got away with a lot of stuff. Maybe it's because of the diminutive size or something like that, or maybe it was just the cuteness, how you went about it.
Well, I think it's a different game now. I wouldn't get away with it now because everything is a yellow card. Like, you know, if you, like when I said that, it was probably worked maybe up to about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. But now with television cameras and with everything, if you do anything like that now, it's a yellow card, or you're brought up with the CCC. So I think for any young lads maybe, because a few young lads said it to me after that, you know, pulling the ball, and if you can't see the ball, pull where you think it is. But I would say to them, don't be doing that, because you can't do that anymore. Because if you misjudge it now, like I think when I was growing up and playing hurling, I think the referee used his judgment that if this guy is trying to be dirty, or if this guy is trying to pull a wrong stroke, then he dished out the yellow and red cards. But I think if he believed, and he would, the referee, you know, they'd be usually very much researched on all the hurlers. If this guy is going for the ball and that, did maybe, you know, give him the benefit of the doubt. They don't do that anymore because they're reviewed so much now as well. Yeah. So, and just, it is techniques, like swinging everywhere, I don't think that. But listen, I'm not going to try and change the way people think at this stage. That they all have their own opinions, but it's technique. I will say that. I'm not going to come out because I'm still hurling, so I can't give away any secrets, but it's technique. So the ball is coming down. If there's something between that ball in your hand, like,
if it happens to get hit by your hurl, so be it.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say hit, but I'd say, technique. I'd say it's all techniques.
Can we stick that picture up again? You're getting Staples, I think. It looks like it's Croke Park, is it?
No, that's the National Hurling League game against Galway.
Right.
In 2000 and
you look three. Yeah, you look pretty young in it, all right.
Yeah, so 20 years of age. I was always very young looking there, but yeah, that was the day of the Staples, so you didn't have to have helmets. Not sure what happened on that day. Just got a clip of a hurling. Came off for a few minutes, and it was after scoring a good few points. It was one of those days where everything was going well.
You're getting back on.
You're getting back on there towards maybe, if you're there, no, listen, I always want to go back on anyway. So Tig, in fairness to him, 3 or 4 Staples and you're back on. You weren't gone for 10 minutes or anything.
Yeah. Staples sound sore.
Not at the time, because
the adrenaline.
The adrenaline is there, but they were sore afterwards.
Yeah, I'm sure. So the evolution of your game, right? There's a period of time where you're kind of getting all-stars in every line, and then eventually you settle into the half-back line. That was always the plan, was it, to migrate back towards the half-back line? Like, in retrospect, in Cody's head, do you think that was his plan? Get Tommy in the team, get him game time, get him experience, but we want him to be a right half-back.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I'd say just the way it worked out, that was where I was home. Was like, I never played in midfield or the forwards, bar 1 or 2 games until I played with Kilkenny. I was always a corner back. Even wing back, I didn't play there till I was a Kilkenny minor. So it was never even thought of to play me in the forwards. And then I suppose I was young at that stage, so Brian felt that he wanted me to play, but he didn't want me in the backs, I suppose. And then I was very attacking in regards.
Yeah, but were you a defensive forward as well? Like, would you have kind of felt part of your job was to stop their half-back line from launching attacks, or were you exclusively, fact this, I'm going to clip 3 or 4 points?
Yeah, no, I was exclusively clip 3 or 4 points if I could. Go everywhere, and maybe that's why I went back into the backs. I probably wouldn't stay in my position. And even the year before, 2005, you see, we played Galway, and I was playing midfield. And I had a very good game. But the problem was, I was marking David Tierney. You remember David, the long hair coming out of the white round micro helmet, and he had a brilliant game as well. So I'd say Brian just said, listen, we need to get this guy into a set position so that he has a man to mark and he'll stay somewhat in that position. So I think that was the reasoning why he wanted to put me back there, is because it was always where I was home, as the backs. I was always facing the ball.
Is that a conversation? Is that like a chat, or is it just there's a training game and you're playing right half back and that's it, it's done?
Yeah, no, it's a simple enough conversation that, Tommy, you're playing the backs. Go out and play.
That's it.
There's no where would you rather play or where would you like to play, which I wasn't into anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not into talking to managers, or, you know what I mean? Like, why is he going to tell me you're playing well? You know you're playing well. You're playing poor. You know you're playing poor.
Yeah.
I think a player knows how he's playing. A player knows what he's doing wrong.
The specifics of the role, even at right half back, we want you to stay in that position because our half back line is going to effectively be this very important line for us for the next 5 years, and we want you to stay there? Or is it like, just play right half back and do what you do?
Yeah, well, it changes the whole time, but at that particular time we were kind of zonal, if you like, so we played our positions.
Yeah.
Because they started to run us. So a half-forward line, I think it was 2004, we played Wexford, and every time their half-forward, right half-forward ran to the left half-forward position, and the backs were running with them. So next minute there was just a load of space created.
Okay, yeah.
So it did its job perfectly. So for the next few years then, from 2006 for probably 3 or 4 years, it was all zonal. So if Brian Hogan's man came running out to me, so that was Niall McCarthy saying the 6th final, if he was going to run out, I was going to stay and go with him, and Brian would shift across maybe and pick up my guy. So just for a few years we played zonal, but we had to change that again after we were beaten in the 2010 final.
Who decided about the zonal stuff? Like, is that a conversation? I guess it has to be, like, this is our plan. And how's that communicated?
Yeah, well, basically we used to have a lot of team talks. So like a business would have now, like, you'd have your chats and different groups would come up with different things, but it usually ended up with what Brian wanted. So, but like, you had so many great heads, like, you had Henry and JJ, Jackie, like, brilliant hurling heads, like, so I think that was the great thing about the Kilkenny management, in that they were willing to, I suppose, tap into that knowledge, and, they never came up to you maybe personally and said, well, what do you think we should do? But, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, or maybe a bit less, once or twice a year, we'd have meetings on how we're going to win the All-Ireland and that, and, usually it kind of we looked on how we were going, and that time we were winning the whole time, so it was just try and keep it going. Obviously when we lost then 4 years later, we had to change things around a bit.
Because it seems Brian can often be quite set in his ways, or that's just the way we perceive him, but that's clearly not the case. He was willing to adapt.
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to last as long as Brian Cody did if you're going to be a dictator and everything is black and white. He's very much common sense would be just a massive part of Brian's setup, and if he felt it was going to improve his team, well, his whole number one priority was the Kilkenny hurling team. It wasn't Brian Cody, it wasn't Jackie, it wasn't David Herty. His was, if it's going to help this Kilkenny hurling team, I'm willing to do it. And he felt at times that it was worth asking the players, as a group, and definitely it probably paid off for him. And if he liked it, I suppose he went with it. If he didn't, he discarded it. So common sense, I would say, was a massive part of Brian Cody's setup.
Is the defeat to Tipperary in the drive for 5, is that the one that stops the zonal, because you realise it stops working that day? Is that what happens?
It is, and it probably stopped working the year before in 2009, only for PJ Ryan had such a brilliant game. Like, they could have put 3 or 4 goals past us, more goals that were chances that Tipperary forwards usually take.
Yeah.
But PJ Ryan was just in the form of his life, so it probably stopped working the year before. And then
you didn't need to change it because you won the All Ireland.
Well, when we win,
don't broke, don't fix.
We probably did need to change it, but because, as you said, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So the year after, then sure, Lara I think scored. Tipperary definitely I think got 7 goals in the Munster final against Waterford. I think Lara could have got maybe 4 of those. So we felt that Lara he used to win by just making breaks, and then he's on because there was loads of space created.
Yeah. So
that's why we put some on Jackie on Lar, so that cut out, no matter whether it broke, Jackie would be beside him, so that at least there would be no space as such.
Yeah.
And we had to go back to man on man then at that stage.
Yeah, so, I mean that's a tricky enough job because Lar's obviously really fast.
Yeah.
It's like you're man on man on him, but it worked.
It worked, but
you weren't matching pace with pace. It seems counterintuitive that man on man you're putting that really fast guy against Jackie, and it's kind of it's an imbalance. But actually, it's not really. It's about making sure he doesn't get the head of steam, is it?
That's it. And if Lara was number 15 versus number 2, we'll say Jackie, then it might have been a different game because you're talking about explosive off the mark stuff.
Yeah.
But the way Lara was playing, it was constantly moving. So there was never such a sprint.
Yeah.
It was kind of constantly going, moving. And sure, Jackie was with him the whole time then, because Jackie was probably one of our fittest players, if not the fittest, on our panel. So I'd say that's why he was picked, because he was the fittest. Plus he was very, very mentally tough, and he was willing to forsake his game for it.
Tell us about the defeat in the drive for 5. Like, does it rankle now, or do you kind of go, well, we won 4 in a row, so it doesn't really matter? Like, what's your take on it now at this remove?
Yeah, no, I've no regrets about it whatsoever. Like, the 5-0 meant absolutely nothing to me. To be nice looking back now after winning 5-0, I know, but no, because we went on and we won 0-11, and the way I look at it, 11 was a great day.
Yeah.
And maybe without 10 we wouldn't have had 11, because when it comes down to it, and like, you're always talking about performance, and you're reading books, and you're listening to different coaches, and it's all about performance. But I think ultimately when it does come down to it, it's about winning, and it's about that feeling. It's about that feeling that you have when the final whistle goes, that only after winning, maybe as in the final game, so whether that's an All-Ireland final, a county final, say a World Cup final, that's when you get the ultimate joy. So we got that then after 11 again, and yeah, it's nice looking back now after winning 4 in a row, but to me it's just like now I'm craving for another win.
Yeah.
We haven't won in a while there now. My last time involved with Kilkenny was 2014, and even that I obviously didn't get the same unbridled joy because I was a sub that year. But I think that's what you're craving. So records and that, they're nice, and they're nice when people say them to you, but it's winning is where I can see now, like, and I wouldn't have been like Sir Ray Keane and these guys. No, the only thing is he probably didn't enjoy it when he won it.
Yeah, he says that he needed to enjoy it a bit more in that respect.
So I can see where he's coming from, but I do enjoy the victories, and we enjoy the victories as in you're delighted for maybe a month or two.
Yeah.
But that's what you crave, is that.
Was the dressing room after 2010 an inspiration in 2011, or did you kind of just park it and go, we now have a rival who are worthy adversaries? Like, what was that dressing room like?
Yeah, well, the dressing room was, I suppose, listen, we were so used to winning.
What do we do now?
Yeah, it wasn't it wasn't complete devastation, like, because, you know, if you're going up trying to win your first one, say if Galway, I'm sure the Waterford dressing room this year was absolute devastation, because you're wondering, can we ever get here again? But I think for us, we were after winning 4 in a row, so we were after tasting victory 4 times in a row. So it only started to develop then over the week or two after that, the months or two. You're watching the Tipperary players in the papers. You're watching them up at all the awards. You're watching them on the Late Show. You've seen it all. That's when it all starts to, because, you know, I suppose you start to get envious, and you know what a great time they're having, and you want to have that. So I would say not just the dressing room, I'd say the 3 or 4 months after it was definitely the hungriest winter we ever put in, I think, in my time, because when we used to meet each other, we were talking about couldn't wait for Tipperary. We were playing them in February, and, you know, it wasn't the All-Ireland final we were waiting for. We just couldn't wait. I think we had them in Thurles, and we just couldn't wait for it. And it was an enjoyable winter from that point of view as well.
I'd say the carrot of losing 2010 was even kind of more of a carrot to you that year than, say, Waterford's loss this year will be to them, because, as you say, you had tasted success 4 times in a row. You knew exactly how good it was, so it added to that hurt of the defeat as well.
Yeah, definitely, and we could use it as motivation, I suppose. Waterford can use it as motivation, but they also have to, I suppose, build belief in that they can do it. They can perform on the biggest stage. So I think that would be the difference between the two losses.
When the end comes, was it obvious? Like, did you know that's the end, I have to go, or was it I can still do this?
Yeah, well, I still thought I could do it, but I wasn't being picked. I had my mind made up in April that year. I was after training from. It's funny, the older you get, the more preparation you put into it.
You're still only 30, 31 at this stage.
Still, I was 31 that year, yeah. But there was 4 of us though. There was Jackie, Hoagie, JJ, myself, all over the 30.
Yeah.
And we were after obviously getting beaten, and Clare were that young team after winning 2013. So Brian obviously had it in his head that he needed a shake-up here, and there wasn't going to be 4 of us. And so I wasn't playing. I played something like 2 matches between November and in 6 months, April. And as I told you earlier on, like, it wasn't the All-Irelands. Yes, they were brilliant, and that's what you wanted, but the first thing was I love playing. Yeah. So once I wasn't being picked, that was it. And then he put me up into the forwards. So I didn't enjoy the forwards. Like, I don't enjoy the forwards. So, you know, and I came back into form, but I still wasn't as good as what was there in the forward division, no matter what kind of form I was in.
Did it make it easier that the brother came in for you initially at that time in the league? Or worse?
Not really, no. It was still hard. But it made it easier that, like, I was still shouting, you know, I was still delighted for him. Like, there was no... I know usually when a guy replaces you, you're really hoping maybe it doesn't go so well, but the team still wins, you know. But then you grow bonds with guys, and you don't want that to happen either. But then when it's your brother altogether, you definitely can't wish he doesn't go well. So I was delighted for him, and I was delighted for a lot of the Kilkenny players that hadn't won. Conor Fogarty, like, was a sub. You know, you have to try and think, like, because otherwise you become selfish in that. So I was trying to think, how am I going to enjoy this? So I was thinking, first of all, obviously you're trying to get back in the team, but when you don't get back, how are you going to enjoy it? So I was just thinking of the likes of Lester Ryans, Conor Fogarty's, Park. These guys were all subs when I was playing. So when I was winning All-Irelands, it wasn't because of myself. Them lads were driving us in training. So I had to kind of park the bus a little bit and say, listen, it's time to help out these guys. They helped out myself and everyone else long enough. So that's the way I was kind of trying to. But it didn't take away, it was tough now.
Did you think that was actually a hard year for Brian? Because it seems, especially from reading Jackie's book, that you were one of his favourite players. He certainly saw something of himself in you. Did he have some difficulty kind of leaving you on the bench that summer, knowing what you had done for the county before?
I'd say I'm sure it was, because obviously would have had a strong bond with Brian, as a lot of players did. And, you know, after winning so much with your players, there's going to be that natural affection towards guys. And I'm sure it was very difficult for him, but it goes back to the job, and you'd often hear him saying it, is if he can't make the correct decision for the team, well, then he shouldn't be in the job. So I'd say he realised how tough it was, but said, listen, I'm here for a reason. I'm not here to keep Tommy Walsh happy or to keep anyone happy. I'm here for Kilkenny to win All-Irelands.
Did he have many conversations about that process of kind of leaving you on the bench for the entire season?
Yeah, no. No conversations whatsoever, but I didn't want them, like some guys would have went up to me, I think.
Go away and work on this and you might get back in, because it's all nonsense, right?
Yeah, I think, and I knew as well, like, if it was back in the backs, it would have been different, because once I came into form there then, you'd be knocking down the door like I should be playing, because you have that confidence in yourself. But in the forwards, I never really believed, probably, I knew I could hurl, and there's days I could score 4 and 5 points, but...
When you moved to the forwards, that was it, you were forward. You weren't actually trying out for the backs anymore. In training matches, you always played forward. Is that what happened?
Always played forwards,
I just assumed that was like, get some game time into them and then we move them back into the backs later on in the summer, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen. I was in the forwards the whole time from then on.
All right.
Time to time, maybe you might be put back midfield or that.
Yeah.
But
I could just wander back into the half back line here and remind you all of that.
Yeah. Make a few switches myself.
Yeah. Brian just said. I didn't hear it.
The funny thing about it is, like, and you wouldn't hear it spoken about much, but when you're actually dropped, it's nearly worse when the team is going well, because suddenly you realise they don't need me. And at least if the team, like for Jackie, they were losing, so at least he can go off in his own head and say, well, he could have picked me there, and I could have been the difference. I didn't even have that kind of comfort that if he picked me now, we could be winning. Mine was, well, he hasn't picked me and they're still winning well, so
that's a harsh lesson, all right.
Yeah, it is tough.
There was one last thing we wanted to bring up from Jackie's book. This is a story about Tony Kelly, and this is, you're all away, right? You're on a night out in Wexford for Brian Dowling's stag. We were all juiced up on the Friday night, especially Tommy Walsh. He approached me with that glint in his eye, shining with a mad fusion of craziness and intent. Who do you want? What? I want Tony Kelly anyway. What are you raving about, Tommy? You can have Podge if you want him. He looks over at JJ. JJ, you can take Conor McGrath. And the whole night it keeps going. This is you just getting into their heads. These two young bucks can't have us.
No, I think it was like the time Tipperary was beat us in 2010. I was probably saying that for 3 months about Bonnermar. So, I don't know, listen, it's just a bit of crack. And
he tells the Bonner story in the book as well, I think.
Oh, does he? Yeah. So, I didn't see it now, but like, you could switch around a few guys, Tony Kelly, Bonner, Niall McCarthy, John Gardner, like, it depended on the year that it was a different player probably inside in that, but I was just...
The psychologist would say this is visualization, where you're like focusing on your enemy and then it's going to happen for you. Is that like, you're just thinking, no, I'm getting obsessed about them?
Yeah, well, I used to get obsessed with a bit of fun in my own head,
Yeah.
If now the unfortunate was I wasn't picked then to play him, but I came on the league against Clare as a sub, and I remember the first ball came in anyway. Conor Ryan, he was the centre back, Conor Ryan, and I gave away a free, just a bit kind of too enthusiastic coming in. And he was kind of shouting down something at me. I don't know what he was saying. There was nothing too untoward or anything like that. But I go up and kind of hit him a little bit of a shot. And, and I remember after the game, I could have got sent off. I wasn't sent off, but I remember Brian came up to me after the game and, and he was here, like, you can't be doing that. Like, what did James was after saying something to me coming on, James McGarry, because he knew, like, first of all, after losing, and then I wasn't being picked, so I was mad to get on. And he obviously... told me to maybe be calm when I was going on, but I wasn't listening to any of this. I just wanted to get on and win the ball, and next minute I did that and probably could have got sent off. And Brian came over to me in Carlow. We were training Carlow that time, and said to me, what did James say to you before he went on that match? And I was like, I knew where it was going. I said, nothing, just trying to get a few pints. And he wasn't going away, and he said, no, what did he say to you? And he said, I said, well, score a few pints. No, you didn't. He said, when you go on there, don't go mad. And what did you do? You went fucking mad. So, that brims from all that kind of talk. Is a visualisation. I didn't think so at the time, but maybe looking back, maybe it is now, because when you do go on, there is that intent, like, but it's enjoyable. But I love that whole side of things as well,
Well, I'm glad that we managed to rekindle some of that sense of excitement for you this summer. Patricky on Periscope says, Tommy Walsh, 100% the best dressed guest ever on Off the Ball AM. This is true. Who succeeds Brian Cody when the time comes? Henry Steffen took his first steps into managerial stuff last night with the club.
Yeah. Was that announced last night, was it?
Yeah.
Yes. Henry, I'm sure he will have ambitions. to be a Kilkenny manager. There's a few very good guys in Kilkenny. Like Martin Fogarty was there before as a selector. Adrian Finan was underage manager for a few years, under 21 and that. You have Henry himself, a few other guys. Like, I know Brian a long time and I don't see him going anywhere.
Yeah.
So it'll depend on when he does decide to hang up the boots, because everyone will be at different stages of their careers then. So
It could be a decade away. Like.
Sure, it could be a decade again.
Yeah.
So it'll be a different, it could be Conor Fogarty or some young fella now,
He was in the office yesterday doing a photo call with Pat Kenny and a couple of young lads with hurls, and I was like, yeah, that is a fit and healthy looking man. Not a pick on him, like.
And he loves what he's doing.
Yeah.
And you, like yourself there, Ger, guys, when they love what they're doing, they end up being brilliant at it. Like, and Brian Cody will stay going like that for as long as he's enjoying it. And his wife Elsie very much loves it as well. So he has that whole he has that support from home.
Fierce Andy watching the show at 3:45 p.m. since I'm living in Taiwan, says Andy. Good man yourself. A great way to get through the last hour of work. Thanks very much for that. And then a load of people, Dan on Twitter and Suzanne, had the same question. Who was the toughest opponent you ever faced?
Ben O'Connor from Cork.
Right.
Now you have to rewind back to the time it was as well. We had a massive rivalry with that Cork team, as you know. And Ben, used to come across him a few times. But I suppose I loved him first and foremost as a hurler. Would have watched him when they beat Kilkenny in '99. He had a brilliant year that year. He was a corner forward, but he was so tough. He was so skillful. He was Newtown, Shandrum were a brilliant club team at the time, and himself and Jerry used to run the Roost with them as well. So I had massive respect for him as a hurler before even marking him, and then to get the chance to mark him, then there was no quarter given. So he was the toughest I've marked.
You would have been a cornerback coming onto the team at that stage, marking him as a corner forward.
No, it would have been different games, challenge matches, league games, championships. So usually around wing back, it would have been.
Okay. Because he would have played a lot of midfield as well, kind of as a third midfielder.
Well, Ben wouldn't have really. No, that would have been Jerry. Jerry spent all his time out there. Ben would have, as a half forward. Yes, he would have probably covered back a bit more. He was kind of went everywhere. He's nearly like maybe myself as a forward. Yeah. And a quarter forward he was, but yes, it was kind of.
Did you have to follow him? Was that at that stage?
No, because I would have been wasting my time. I wouldn't have caught him. So I had to hope that the boys were doing their job, that someone had mishit it and it'd come straight back down to me. But now the lad that gave me the most trouble would have been Danny Sutcliffe.
Right.
He gave me a horrendous time, and Danny.
What are we talking here? 2012.
It was a few years. 12, 13, probably 14. No, was it? Yeah, 14. Sure, I started my last game. No, it was
in the
last
league.
game.
Yeah.
Well, mine only I was flying it, and next minute he scored 1-3 in about 5 minutes. I was took off at half time, so. But I used to follow him.
Yeah.
We were kind of playing a different game at that stage. We were kind of
supposed to follow.
Yeah, and I wasn't following him, and it just didn't work,
Right. So maybe Danny Sutcliffe has plenty more to offer this season if he comes back and
he's a brilliant hurler. But he needs to find his love for the game, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, maybe Pat Kilroy's going to get him back. Look, let's play you some Stuart Lancaster from last night. Tommy's going to stay with us. Jess Kelly's going to be with us in a minute. Stuart Lancaster was speaking with Joe on last night's show. They covered loads of stuff. They covered farming and foot and mouth and the media as well. Have a look.
I would also have to say the family was, priority really. Sure. But it's he leaves a mark without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
You lose your job in those circumstances, and obviously it hurts you hugely.
Mm.
But when I saw the pain it was causing everyone those closest to me, my friends, my mum and dad, my kids and Nina.
They're upset for you.
Exactly. And you can't do anything about it.
Mm.
You can't make the pain go away. You can't make the pain go away for anyone.
And were your parents the type who couldn't help themselves, but it's their son, I'm checking all the papers, I've seen everything.
Yeah, they weren't too bad, but my mum made a really good point, and she said, it doesn't matter how old you are, Stuart, you're my son and I want to defend you. And, she couldn't.
Mm.
She couldn't. And, I could see the pain I was causing them, and not deliberate pain, obviously, but I could see what it was putting them through. And that's why, when this job came up, they were really pleased because, it's out of England, it's out of the spotlight a bit, and they can, they've been over, they enjoy Dublin.
Yeah.
And when it finished, I remember actually on the day it was announced I was finishing as national coach. I was coaching Dan's team, who were sort of 14, 15 at the time, and even the other coaches thought, Stuart might not be here tonight, you know, it's obviously been a pretty traumatic day. And
it had been announced that day.
It was that day, yeah, and I walked down and one of the lads in the team went, "You all right, Stuart?" I went, "Yeah," and I said, "Are you okay?" And he went, "Yeah." I said, "Right, let's go and train then, shall we?" And that was it. The others said, "Right, let's get on with it," and that was the way they sort of dealt with it. And
were you kind of dying inside, or like how did you process it?
Not at that moment, because you know you're back with the people who know you best. But yeah, I mean, you're dying inside.
Really?
More of that good stuff available on podcast. Tommy, are you big into your technology?
Not really, no.
Do you
diary man kind of?
Yeah, really, like old school writing stuff down. Are you on Twitter secretly? Have we managed to get you on?
No.
No lurking?
Not yet.
Exclusively through the family, is it?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Gonna have a look.
Jess, how are you? This is 2 weeks in a row. We've brought people who, Kenny Cunningham was here last week.
Yeah, I survived Kenny. Everyone from off the ball came up to me going, "So you survived Kenny, you can do anyone now. You can deal with anybody in terms of technology now." So
Kenny couldn't use his phone last week. He was like, "Oh, this Spotify thing, how do I play some MP3s on the..."
We had about a 5-minute chat afterwards where he was asking how to get music onto his phone. It was interesting.
Yeah. So this week we're talking about, I've got these little ear things in my...
Yeah, so last week we kind of focused on the wearables in terms of fitness, and this week, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm running I always have to have some form of music on. So we've got 2 sets of headphones. Your ones, once again, you always get the fancy stuff.
That's coincidence.
Yeah, sure. So you have ones that are the Samsung Icon X, and they are €250. And then Owen has a set of headphones that are €25. So we've got 2 different price points there. So yours are called the Goji G-Spin BT16, a very catchy name there.
Yeah.
So they're £25. So you guys did the reviews this week.
These are Samsung, and I think maybe it would have worked better with a Samsung phone. I'm on a OnePlus, but it's grand.
Cool.
It's grand.
At the end of segment.
£250 for a lot of Bluetooth. You stick Bluetooth in and you're walking around the place, running around the place, and the sound goes, and you're like, and you've got to
reconnect them and all the rest. Yeah. So how did you find the setup though? Because they say you don't have a Samsung phone, so did it pair easy enough through your Bluetooth?
Yeah. In fairness, I didn't read the instructions until this morning.
Cool.
So I was like, when you're like, oh, how did you find the setup? Oh, maybe I should just check. Is there other stuff that it can do that I don't know about?
Yeah.
And I mean, it has a lot of functionality that would...
that would have helped the procedure.
Well, no, in fairness, it is really easy. You stick on your Bluetooth, you put them on, so long as they're charged, and away you go.
Yeah.
So that is very straightforward.
I was going to say that we had the wearables in last week. Mm-hmm. These would be very, very compatible with a smartwatch.
Totally, yeah.
Because, as you say, it's on your wrist. You're not going to get your wrist is not going to get detached from your body unless you're in a completely bizarre circumstance, at which point losing your Bluetooth connection will be the least of the worries in your mind. So if you're out running, you need a wearable with it, is what I think, especially if it's this cheap.
Yeah.
I think it's how much did he say this was again?
They're £25.
€25 is a bargain for these.
Yeah.
I think for any Bluetooth device, that's probably very good value in terms of the market. It's obviously handy the way you can wear it around your neck like that. So that means it's not going to fall out of you.
Yeah, because those are literally just earbuds. They're kind of like the Apple AirPods in that you just put them in. And so I was nervous when I was using them that if I went for a run, because I don't wear my glasses when I'm running, and there's no luck of me finding something like that if you're out running. So were they secure when you were running? Were you comfortable wearing them?
There's this thing here which clicks into your ear.
Yeah.
So it took me a couple of goes to realise, that's important.
Yeah.
That's there to...
And did you figure that you can put music onto them as well?
I didn't, but I read that this morning, and that's good.
So yes, you've got 2 options. So you can either pair it to your phone when you're...
You can have
going
1,000 songs on these, which is pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, so 4 gigs of storage. The thing with these, and this is the biggest thing that I found when I was reviewing them, is that all of the tech is basically in one of them. So you can get motivational speech. It's like Oprah in your ear when you're running. It's like, keep going, you're doing amazing. But all that comes from the one. So if you are out running, say if you're out for 45 minutes, the battery might go in one of them.
Okay.
So you'll still hear the music if it's paired to your phone through one of them. Battery life is a big thing. And also I brought in, these are ones from Sony that I used to use, and I love them, and they're really handy. Again, you can store music in it. But I lost the bloody charger after about 2 weeks. And it's the same with all of these. Like with this one in particular, you need to have the pod and then connect it in. So it's not as straightforward as just having your headphones that plug into a device with a jack. These ones are less high maintenance.
Less of a nuisance for sure, yeah.
What was the sound quality like though? Did you
Pretty good. Like, I'm not one of those people who like
Is a
pays
music snob.
200 and whatever euro for a set of Beats because the sound
cable.
quality is better. You know, I don't have those level of notions. Like, just give me tunes relatively loud and I'm fine. You know.
Yeah.
So like, I'm the last person you want to ask. I know I shouldn't be working in a radio station if I
audio
can't
quality
judge.
doesn't matter.
Exactly, but it's fine. It's definitely not anything mind blowing, but it's not bad enough for you to dismiss the €25 price tag, because I think €25 is an excellent price for those.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed with the sound quality from these. I still have to find a pair of Bluetooth headphones that aren't the big on-ear ones that have decent sound quality.
They're grand for 250 quid. You want slightly better. I mean, if somebody bought me that for Christmas, you'd be like, oh, great, thanks very much. And then I'd be worried about them falling out the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, that is kind of the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would you give them a go?
I would, yeah. I'm not really into listening to music on the run, but when you said 1,000 songs, well, my biggest, I suppose, challenge is putting the music on.
Okay.
But if someone put it onto the device for me, I'd be happy enough.
That is a genuine problem though, because now if like a lot of us have moved away obviously from the physical copies of things, and it's all on Spotify, but unless you know how to download music and buy files, put them on your computer and then drag them across.
It's not straightforward.
It's not straightforward.
Yeah.
So that's not a I'm a Luddite thing. That's you're a normal human being.
Yeah.
It isn't as straightforward as it should be and as it could be. But I do like that you can put the music onto them, but again, I just don't think I'd pay 250 quid for them, to be honest.
I agree.
Yeah, that's that.
The other thing we were trying out this week was this new GoPro, which can hook up to your phone. Now, I'm not sure, is this a new thing, Jess? But I certainly have never heard of a GoPro where you can attach it somewhere and you're actually watching the video on your phone and you can remotely control the recording status of it, etc., etc. I'm not sure what the going price is of this, but if it's a big addition on the regular GoPro just for the function of being able to put it onto your phone and use it remotely like that, I'm not so sure if it's worth that. But if it's only an extra tenner or so, it's a pretty cool feature.
It's 540 quid.
Right, okay, yeah, so...
That's why when I gave it to you, I was like, please don't break it.
Yeah.
No, so the idea with this one is that it shoots 4K. So if you have a new fancy 4K TV and the image quality is unreal, then it's definitely worth the investment. It's really good for anybody, like whether you like surfing or if you're biking, anything like that, anything that's outdoors, it's a proper hardy camera. You can take it into the sea with you.
But that's the same with most GoPros, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so the big feature is that it's 4K, and as I said, there's the remote control with the phone. But there's a lot of people who want these, and I have kind of reviewed them all and I've played around with them all, and I don't know that there is a massive difference, or again, if I'd paid the extra few £100 for this one over the Hero 2, which I think is 249 or something like that. So it just depends on what you want to do with it. But you can take 12 megapixel still photos with it, and you were saying you're playing around with some of the image quality. It is quite cool.
It is. The image quality is excellent. I suppose if you're actually producing content of that standard, it would be very handy. I'm not sure, is it outrageous to suggest you could attach it to a drone, for example, if your drone isn't of 4K quality?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think for like industry standard, it's at that level. But for somebody who just likes to mess around and go snorkeling and use their GoPro every July or whatever, I'm not sure, is it worth 450 quid?
Yeah, I was in some boxing clubs last year because I was doing a report, and they have them on the side of the rings because you can use like a slow-mo motion and you can see like exactly what the position is and like how fast you're moving, all of that stuff. You can break it down. I think it's like 60 frames per second that it shoots, which is just incredible.
Were you guys filming training sessions at all at the end?
I don't think we did train sessions, but we definitely did start filming games, and like I think everyone does it now. And I suppose when you're filming games and training sessions, it's probably keeping it simple, what you're going to get out of it, as opposed to showing guys mind-boggling stuff. So I think we were definitely, I suppose, took that on board in the last few years.
Because there's a lot of chaos in a hurling match that is kind of hard to quantify. It's not like a lot of other sports which have stop-start, measurable statistics. It's like possessions, I think, is important, and how many times you're getting on the ball. And if
and you could use something like, say, if a wing back or a midfielder was getting the ball, and you notice from the videos, every time he got the ball, he hit a certain way, and it wasn't beneficial to your team. You could then use that and say, listen, when you get the ball, try and change it up a bit.
Yeah.
So I think to keep it simple, like I was talking to a guy before in work that he was into all this analysis of information and that was the one thing he said to me, like if you ever are getting involved in coaching or anything like that, it's use it, and there might be mind-boggling stuff coming to you, but you need to get that across in a simple way where you'll see a result out of it.
Yeah.
You know, like rather than telling a lad maybe hit 10 wides, why was he hitting 10 wides? So like even if you look at maybe Austin last year, like lads were saying like he was shooting from everywhere, but when they probably looked at it, through their video analysis and that, well, he probably had nowhere to hit it. That was their team option at the time.
Yeah. So he's getting blamed for something that's actually there's a collection of other causes of that.
Yeah, and it was the team kind of mission, I suppose.
All right, let's move on. Just want to very quickly talk to Martha Kelner, who's the chief sports reporter of The Guardian, because they've broken a huge story along with their colleagues at Le Mans this morning that there was an adverse drugs finding against Chris Froome in the Vuelta. Martha, good morning to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of this story and what the potential repercussions are for Chris Froome?
Yeah, good morning. So the genesis of the story is basically a number of sources came to both The Guardian and Le Monde, advising us that during the Vuelta a España in September, that Chris Froome had a urine test that had returned an adverse analytical finding, which is the equivalent of a failed drugs test. It's not an anti-doping rule violation per se, because they do get the chance to appeal, but it could mean the length of bans have varied with the finding that Froome has had against him, which is that he's had double the permitted level of Salbutamol, which is a drug he takes to treat his asthma. So it could vary from anything between a slap on the wrist to a 6-month, even a year-long ban or longer. It's just going to be a watching brief, really, to see how the UCI choose to deal with it and whether Chris Froome is able to explain why he did have double the amount of permitted levels of salbutamol in his system at that point.
The initial response from Froome and his team have been to say that he had the asthma worsened over the final week of the Vuelta, and so they took more medicine and they took it under medical supervision. But that's kind of the doctor told me to take this defence, when we know that ignorance is never a defence in these cases. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Chris Froome says he was acting on the guidance of the Team Sky doctor. There was, I've forgotten the exact name of the doctor who was out there at the Vuelta with them. But he says that the doctor advised him to take increased levels of this medication, and that he did so under supervision. He doesn't feel like he's knowingly broken the rules, or he doesn't feel like he's broken the rules at all. But obviously, ignorance is no defence in these anti-doping cases, and the UCI will be under pressure to not be showing any special favours to Chris Froome, regardless of his status in the sport.
Yeah, notwithstanding that, it does seem that this has come to light only because of the excellent work of you guys and your colleagues at Le Mans, as opposed to it actually being made public so far by the UCI or the Vuelta organisers or the agency who's doing the tests. Yeah,
so there's no legal onus on either the UCI or Team Sky to make it public, but it is interesting that the only reason they have made it public is because ourselves and our colleagues at Le Mans have forced their hand. The UCI sometimes choose to make anti-doping rule violations, or they have to make anti-doping rule violations public. But with an adverse analytical finding, they can wait basically until there's a resolution to the case. But as we know, Chris Froome's working with a team of scientists and lawyers with Team Sky to try and find a resolution to this problem, to try and explain the reasons behind why he did have so much salbutamol in his system. There can be a number of different explanations for it. Some people have a higher secretion rate in their urine, possibly because they're dehydrated. There can be a number of other reasons, and there's a thing that they can do called a pharmacokinetics test, which basically often involves spending prolonged periods of time in a laboratory, up to 16 hours, where your urine is tested every 2 hours under a number of conditions to see how the medication is reflected in the samples, basically.
Just on the last point, Martha, how does this change the perception of Chris Froome? Because all the people who've had big suspicions of Froome, they've just been associating him with Dave Brailsford or with the suspicions around Bradley Wiggins. It's all been to do with association. But this is the first time we've had something pinned on the head of Chris Froome. So I'd imagine this is going to change the public perception of him as a national hero. He's nominated for Sports Personality of the Year once again this year. Yeah. This changes things massively, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can see from the way people react to Chris Froome on the continent when he's riding in the Tour de France. He's had urine poured over him. He's been physically threatened. which has been sad to see in the past because he is, a national hero, 4-time Tour de France winner. But this is the first time that Chris Froome has been directly implicated in any suspected wrongdoing. It's the first time there's been any hint of wrongdoing attached to Chris Froome himself. Obviously, as you alluded to, we had the situation with Bradley Wiggins and the duty bag package last year, which obviously was a massive cloud over Team Sky. Chris Froome did very well to distance himself from that. He did an unusual step of publicly challenging Team Sky and Bradley Wiggins, saying they have questions to answer over that. But now Chris Froome has questions to answer himself.
Martha, you've been really good with your time, and I know this is a massive breaking story for you guys. One last point, you mentioned the watching brief. How much longer do you think before we actually get some proper further information about what the defence Froome is going to make against this is and what the repercussions are? Yeah,
it's a bit of a strange one because I would have expected to have some sort of resolution back. Just a brief bit of explanation. The A sample returned an adverse analytical finding. Team Sky then requested to look at the B sample. Chris Froome wasn't actually there at the opening of the B sample, but the B sample confirmed the findings of the A sample. So we're now tied up in this legal process. I would expect in the next month. I would think Team Sky and Chris Froome are as keen to have a resolution to this as anyone, because then they can either get going with whatever the ban might be, or clear the name of Chris Froome, which is obviously what they would want to do. I would say sooner rather than later, but it's a bit of guesswork at the moment.
Martha, great stuff, great work. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Martha Kelner there, Chief Sports Reporter with the Guardian newspaper. A lot of asthmatics in cycling. A lot of asthmatics in hurling, was there?
Yeah, there was a few, yeah.
Yeah, a lot in every dressing room. There are two other things we need to talk about. The fact that it's now possible to get stuff to wear to help you sleep better.
Yeah. So interesting. So there's a device called the Retimer, and it's €149, and it's developed by a university in Australia. And what it does is you put it on like goggles, and it shines in blue and green light to try and keep you awake, and it can retrain your body so that you fall asleep at the right time. The Australian football team have been using it because when they were qualifying for the World Cup, they were travelling around the place, and obviously they big distances to travel. So when on their way back, their planes were equipped with massage tables, fancy food, but also the players wore these devices. But the idea with these is that you don't have to go for light therapy, which is a thing that's been around for a long time. These are now portable ones that you can bring with you. So if you are working on shift work, if you've just trouble sleeping, you can wear it, because obviously we know that sleep kind of helps the body repair.
And is it expensive?
It's like less than £200, which I think is quite affordable for a wearable that you can have in your home and wear whenever you want. Yeah, so it does look something kind of like from the new Star Wars film, but it just shines in the right amount of light, so it kind of stops the melatonin being produced, so you don't fall asleep in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. It's just an interesting use of technology, because obviously, as I said, it does kind of, sleep does help the body repair better than pretty much anything else.
You had trouble sleeping sometimes, or not in other times?
Yeah, most of the time I was fine. But I could imagine how one of them would be beneficial, all right, because you're definitely, after a good night's sleep, you're a lot livelier, and absolutely. So I had never had any problem bar once or twice. But
you had to lie down in the jacks in the hotel one time.
Yeah, that was the 07 All Ireland. Couldn't sleep the night before, but sure, it's a story for another day.
And then the last question from James Dean: if Tommy had music on his headphones, what would he have? Well, it's S Club 7, is it?
It'd be Ed Sheeran, Perfect. I'm liking that song there at the moment. So I kind of like all them kind of songs, depending on the mood I'm in.
He's in Nolan Park, is he, next year? Is that one of the gigs?
I think he's in Cork. He's in Cork, yeah.
And Galway as well.
And Galway.
Yeah, he's doing Cork, Galway and Dublin.
Yeah. I bought tickets for Picture This, is it?
Oh yeah, at Ty's Finest.
I don't know, Marlies knows how good they are, I don't, but I bought the tickets anyway, so I think it's on a Saturday in June.
Oh, there you go.
So you're not going to Ed Sheeran?
What?
You're not going to Ed Sheeran?
I'll try if there's still tickets. So you have to wait with matches and all that planning before you can.
Of course, yeah.
But the fixtures came out the other day, so it might be that bit easier.
There you go.
Have a good bit of time off during the summer.
a bit of progress being made. All right, loads more on Chris Froome to come across the day right here on offtheball.com, and of course they'll be talking about it on the radio show tonight. Was there anything else that we needed to talk about in tech?
think that's it for this week.
Okay, if anybody wants to check out the stuff that we've been talking about there, you can get it on the Off the Ball website as well, and you can hear more from Jess on News Talk. Alan Quillen's going to be part of the show tomorrow. Also going to be talking about the best sports books of the year with a couple of people who have actually produced sports books this year, and we might be some of us might be in a bit of a heap tomorrow because we're heading off to the Phillips Lighting Sports Manager of the Year.
It's an I, not a we.
It's an I, not a we. We're done, Tommy. Brilliant. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Jared.
It's been a pleasure. We'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.